Ukraine's shadow swarmed the night. Russia's $15 billion Lifeline went up in flames. It was 1:25, September 27th, 2025. 1,000 kilometers from Kyiv, Russia's most vital oil port was about to vanish in fire. It began with a silence, the kind that comes before history changes. At 1:25 a.m., radar operators in Russia's Leningrad Oblast saw faint traces on their screens. Blurred echoes, moving north to south, too small for aircraft, too steady for birds. Within seconds, the anomaly multiplied 10, then 20, then 70 separate tracks. To Russian command, it looked like an error. To Ukraine's drone operators, it meant mission live. And at that same moment, the Baltic wind rolled across the Primorsk oil terminal. Two Aframax-class tankers, Captain Lob and Sergei Gorshkov, were loading crude bound for Asia. Each vessel carried nearly 700,000 barrels of oil, a floating fortune worth over $15 billion across the fleet. Inside the Ukrainian control bunker, screens glowed cold blue. Technicians whispered coordinates. Engineers monitored power loads. And at the front console, a commander gave the order in calm English, "Launch the swarm." 70 drones lifted in sequence, engines cutting through the night. The first wave skimmed forest edges. The second followed riverbeds. The third rode the lowlands near Kursk. By the time Russia's air defense realized what was coming, the drones were already halfway to their target. Primorsk is not just a port. It is the artery of the Russian Federation's war economy. Located 80 miles northwest of St. Petersburg, it handles nearly 1/5 of all Russian seaborne oil exports. Its pipelines move 1 million barrels of crude every day, the money that keeps engines running, bombs falling, and soldiers paid. Every tanker leaving its docks is a transaction in blood and fuel. That is why Kyiv chose this target. A single successful strike would not just damage steel, it would damage strategy. It would punch a hole in Moscow's confidence and expose how fragile its economic backbone truly was. The port was supposed to be untouchable. Surrounded by S-400 batteries, covered by Panzer S-1 guns, and monitored by Big Bird radar arrays, it was the crown jewel of Russia's northern defense network. On paper, nothing could breach it. But Ukraine understood something. Moscow forgot that walls built outward can still fall from within. By exploiting range, electronic warfare, and deception, Kyiv aimed to show the world that intelligence and precision, not numbers, define the future of warfare. And on that cold September morning, the proof was already in the air. The operation began months earlier, deep inside Ukraine's Directorate of Unmanned Systems. Intel analysts had studied Russia's Baltic air defense grid, line by line, satellite by satellite. They discovered the gap's radar blind spots between forest ridges, coastal clutter near the Gulf of Finland, and timing delays between handoffs from S-400 to Panzer units. Ukraine's planners built their strike plan like a symphony: deception, jamming, and precision, all playing in sequence. Phase 1. A flood of low-cost AQ-400 Scythe drones, plywood bodies, simple GPS, no armor, designed to fill radar screens with noise. Phase 2. Banshee 7 electronic warfare drones, carrying jamming pods and directional antennas, programmed to mimic heavy aircraft signatures and confuse Russian command centers. Phase 3. The heart of the mission, 15 UJ-26 Bober extended range drones. Each carried a 40-kilogram warhead and an additional fuel module, pushing range beyond 1,000 kilometers. Every drone had a role, every loss was calculated. Even failure was part of the design. If half the fleet died in transit, but a few reached Primorsk, the mission would still cripple Moscow's oil artery. No radio links, no live control, only preloaded terrain data and coded timing. Once launched, the swarm was on its own. A silent armada of machines, guided not by pilots, but by mathematics. At 0145, the first wave crossed into Russian airspace. Radar stations at Tosno and Pskov lit up with alarms. Operators shouted coordinates, phones rang, commands overlapped. By 0210, over 40 contacts filled the regional network. Russian duty officers at the Western Military District believed they were under a mass missile attack. S-400 batteries near St. Petersburg came alive. Gravestone engagement radars tracked targets. 48 N-6 missiles lifted from launch tubes in streaks of fire. Panzer guns opened up with 5,000 round per minute bursts. Tracers clawed across the sky. Yet what they were killing were ghosts' decoys, worth less than $20,000 each. As the defenders fired upward, the real strike force flew beneath the radar horizon. The Banshee 7s jammed frequencies, flooding tracking screens with static snow. Operators reported whiteouts, unable to distinguish real from false. In the confusion, air defense batteries cannibalized their own bandwidth, losing data links and radar locks. By 0345, the Russian network was blind. 7 Bobers were down mechanical failures, terrain collisions, intercepted by chance, but 8 remained. They skimmed at treetop level, crossing frozen rivers and black forests. Their propellers made no sound above the Baltic wind. At 4:45 a.m., the first Bober appeared on Primorsk's coastal radar. The operator barely had time to react. Panzer crews fired 57 E-6 missiles in panic, but the drones were already inside the kill box. The first Bober slammed into the pumping station's control building. The thermobaric warhead detonated, sucking in oxygen, compressing air, and releasing it in a rolling shockwave that turned concrete to dust. The second struck the main pipeline manifold, splitting it open. Fuel surged out, igniting instantly. Flames reached the cranes, then the loading arms, then the tankers themselves. 3 drones targeted the Captain Lob. One tore through the bridge, one hit a cargo tank, and another punched through the deck, igniting thousands of barrels of oil. 2 others hit the Sergei Gorshkov, one in the engine room, one along the starboard hull. By 0447, the entire terminal was burning towers of flame 200 meters high, smoke visible from St. Petersburg. Chaos ruled the Russian command net. Field reports contradicted headquarters orders. Some units claimed victory, others begged for guidance. In Gachina, one lieutenant radioed that all targets destroyed. His report climbed up the chain, convincing senior officers that the attack was over, while the real strike had only just begun. The flaw was human, not technical. The system worked as designed, but the operators trusted automation more than intuition. When the false tracks disappeared, they relaxed. When the radar quieted, they believed it was over. By the time the first explosions lit Primorsk, communications were in meltdown. S-400 sites switched frequencies to avoid jamming, losing sync with their own network. Panzer batteries ran out of missiles. Generators overloaded from continuous fire. In the air defense bunker near St. Petersburg, screens went black one by one. No radar feed, no telemetry, no chain of command. A colonel looked at the static and whispered what none of them wanted to say: "We've lost the port." The fortress they thought invincible had fallen to plywood, electronics, and imagination. By dawn, Primorsk was a city of fire. Emergency sirens echoed across the coast. Cranes melted under waves of heat. Storage tanks burst like dominoes, throwing sheets of burning oil into the sky. A pillar of smoke rose 3 kilometers high, visible even from Finland. On the water, the Captain Lob was finished. Her bridge collapsed inward, flames devouring electronics and crew quarters. The Sergei Gorshkov drifted sideways, her hull cracked open, engines dead. Fuel poured into the bay, turning the sea itself into a mirror of flame. At 0530, the pumping station detonated a second time. The control room imploded as stored vapors ignited. Radiation sensors at St. Petersburg Airport recorded shockwave vibrations. Civil flights diverted. and regional radar networks shut down from overload. By sunrise, Primorsk's command center was gone. Every major loading arm destroyed, pipelines ruptured, the harbor choked with debris, losses mounted with every minute. 2 tankers crippled, 2 more damaged, 4,000 workers evacuated. Economists in Kyiv estimated daily revenue losses for Moscow at $70 to $80 million. Western analysts put total economic impact near $15 billion, when factoring repair costs, export losses, and insurance hikes. The port that once fueled a war now fueled a firestorm, one that burned not just steel, but reputation. When the smoke cleared, the world's military planners took notes. This was no random strike. It was a playbook for 21st century warfare. Lesson 1. Quantity beats cost when guided by intelligence. 70 drones costing less than a single cruise missile overwhelmed one of the most advanced defense grids on the planet. Lesson 2. Electronic warfare is the new artillery. The Banshee 7s did not fire a single shot, yet they silenced radars, blinded systems, and paralyzed an entire command chain. Lesson 3. Asymmetry is not weakness, it is design. Ukraine turned low-cost drones, commercial electronics, and data-driven targeting into a strategic weapon. The message to every nation was clear. Technology and coordination now matter more than brute firepower. For Russia, the implications were devastating. Its layered defenses had been built to face NATO bombers, not swarms of machines costing a fraction of one missile. Its doctrine was static, designed for visibility, not deception. The real victory of the strike was not the fire or destruction. It was the revelation that modern war rewards creativity over mass. Ukraine had rewritten the doctrine of power, one algorithm, one motor, one drone at a time. For the United States, this operation was not a surprise, it was a validation. The Pentagon has long preached that information dominance and autonomous warfare will decide the next conflict. Primorsk proved that theory in combat. America's defense network already leads in swarm coordination, counter-EW measures, and adaptive radar fusion. But Primorsk reminded everyone that leadership must evolve constantly. The enemy adapts faster when hungry and desperate. U.S. Navy and Air Force strategists studied this event frame by frame. The lessons echoed across commands: invest in modular drones, distributed sensor grids, and hardened satellite communications. Every American base, every fuel depot, every maritime choke point must be ready for a similar assault. But there is also opportunity. No nation on Earth matches the United States in industrial innovation. From California's AI labs to Virginia's drone testing ranges, America can build, iterate, and deploy systems faster than any adversary. When the next swarm flies, it will not be plywood and improvised engines, it will be precision, resilience, and unmatched scale. Primorsk was a warning, but for Washington, it was also confirmation that American vision still defines the edge of modern warfare. When footage of the burning port reached global media, markets convulsed. Crude oil prices spiked. Insurance premiums tripled for vessels flagged under Russian control. Maritime companies rerouted tankers away from the Baltic entirely. For the first time since the Cold War, Moscow faced not a military isolation, but an economic quarantine. In Brussels, NATO analysts dissected every frame. In Washington, intelligence officers replayed satellite feeds, studying flight paths, frequencies, and radar blind zones. The conclusion was unanimous. The battlefield had changed permanently. Primorsk was not about territory. It was about time. In 7 hours, drones built from carbon fiber, consumer electronics, and open-source software accomplished what an air wing or missile barrage might not have achieved in days. And they did it without pilots, without direct command, without escalation. The lesson for the world was stark. The new era of warfare will be fought in silence between sensors, algorithms, and machines that never sleep. Victory will not belong to those with the biggest weapons, but to those who can think, adapt, and strike first. Ukraine had shown what innovation looks like under pressure. It reminded the West that courage and technology are not opposing forces, they are the same force when guided by intelligence and purpose. The world had just witnessed the birth of algorithmic warfare, and the ignition spark came from Kyiv. As the flames at Primorsk slowly dimmed, the smoke drifted across the Baltic, and with it, a warning to every nation watching. Fortresses fall not from the outside, but from the inside, from the arrogance that believes defense is perfect, and from the blindness that refuses to evolve. Ukraine's strike proved a truth older than warfare itself. Power is not measured by size or number, but by will and intelligence. A nation under siege, outgunned and outspent, had just reached 1,000 kilometers deep into enemy territory and crippled the economic heart of its invader, using tools built in garages and coded on laptops. For Russia, it was humiliation. For Ukraine, it was justice. For the United States and its allies, it was a vision of the wars to come. The question now is not who has the most weapons, but who can use information, speed, and precision to outthink the enemy. America has the capacity, the technology, and the spirit to lead that revolution. But leadership requires vigilance, innovation, and the courage to act before the first strike ever comes. So now we ask you, the viewers, the analysts, the patriots, watching across the world, if intelligence defines victory, how should the next great power prepare? Leave your answer in the comments. Like, subscribe, and share this analysis. If you believe that knowledge, precision, and courage are the true weapons of the free world. Because in the wars of tomorrow, clarity will strike faster than fire.